There is a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when a teaching pierces through the noise of the world and leaves you with a single haunting question. What if everything you cling to is the very thing that keeps you asleep? Hidden within the enigmatic Gospel of Thomas, an early mystical collection of Jesus' sayings, lies Saying 42, one of the shortest yet most mysterious lines in all of spiritual literature. Become passers-by. Just 2 words, yet behind them unfolds an entire cosmology of perception, identity, and liberation. 2 words that have challenged scholars, mystics, and spiritual seekers for nearly 2,000 years. 2 words that seem to whisper from beyond time, urging us to remember something we once knew but have forgotten. Why would a spiritual master tell his disciples to become passers-by? What are we meant to pass through or pass beyond? And what happens when we stop gripping life as if it belongs to us? Tonight, we step into the liminal space between worlds, where ancient wisdom meets modern confusion, and forgotten truths resurface like relics rising from desert sands. In this video, we're going to excavate the hidden layers of Saying 42. Not through rigid doctrine or surface-level interpretation, but through the eyes of the mystics, those who traveled inward long before psychology existed, those who mapped the inner universe before telescopes touched the sky. We will explore why this brief command appears abruptly, like a secret password in the midst of deeper teachings, and why many believe it holds the key to the entire Gospel of Thomas. We'll journey through ancient desert communities, trace the footprints of wandering sages, and uncover the esoteric foundations behind identity, ego, and the art of non-attachment. By the end, you won't simply understand Saying 42. You'll feel it, like a shift in the air, like a door opening within you. But for now, let the mystery linger. Let the words echo in your mind. Become passers-by. To truly understand the gravity of Saying 42, become passers-by, we must travel back nearly 2 millennia into a world where spiritual knowledge was fragmented, contested, and often delivered in whispers. The Gospel of Thomas was not discovered in a cathedral or a library. It emerged from the desert, silent, sun-soaked, almost dreamlike, near Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945. Buried in clay jars, hidden for centuries, it resurfaced like a message intended for a future age, an age overwhelmed with noise, distraction, and spiritual amnesia. Unlike the canonical Gospels, Thomas is not a story. It is a collection of sayings, many of which begin with "Jesus said," direct transmissions, almost like Zen koans or fragments of an ancient mystery school. Scholars believe it reflects a strand of early Christianity that emphasized inner awakening rather than external belief, experiential knowledge over dogma, transformation over obedience. This was the world of the desert fathers and mothers, of Gnostic mystics who believed salvation came through self-knowledge, gnosis, not through institutions. These communities saw Jesus as a wisdom teacher, a revealer of the hidden structure of reality, someone who spoke in riddles not to confuse, but to unlock something latent within the soul. And Saying 42, tucked between longer and more elaborate teachings, stands out. It is abrupt, intense, minimalistic, as if it were a distilled truth, reserved for those ready to peel back the final layer of illusion. To the ancient mystics, this saying was not merely poetic. It was a guiding principle for spiritual life. They lived as wanderers, not only physically but internally, refusing to let identity calcify, refusing to be trapped by social labels, expectations, or the gravitational pull of ego. They believed that the moment you settle inwardly into certainty, into societal identity, into the illusions of permanence, you become spiritually heavy, unable to see reality clearly. This theme echoes across traditions. Buddhist monks speak of the world as a passing dream, advising practitioners to travel lightly. Sufi mystics call themselves sons and daughters of the moment, unattached to tomorrow. Hermetic teachings remind us that the material world is in constant flux, and clinging only breeds suffering. But in early Christian esoteric thought, the phrase passers-by carried a special weight. It implied not only moving through the world, but moving beyond it, beyond the constructs that define who we think we are. It was an invitation to recognize this life as a temporary passage, a kind of cosmic corridor where the soul gathers experience but does not remain. So why was this understanding forgotten? Because as Christianity centralized, institutionalized, and sought structure, teachings that encouraged inner authority and personal revelation became inconvenient. Passing by is a dangerous idea for any institution built on stability and hierarchy. What can't be controlled is often buried. Thus, saying 42 became a ghost in spiritual history, whispered by mystics, ignored by institutions, rediscovered only when hidden texts returned to the light. And now here we are, in an era where spiritual seekers once again yearn for direct experience, searching for truths unfiltered by rigid systems. We turn to saying 42, not as historians, but as travelers. Because the command to become passers-by is not a relic, it is a living doorway. To feel the full force of saying 42, become passers-by, we must step into the psychology, the symbolism, and the existential landscape of the ancient seeker. This brief command is not philosophical poetry. It is a spiritual strategy, a method, a way of orienting oneself in a world designed to pull the soul into forgetfulness. Let's begin with the most immediate and literal interpretation. A passerby is someone who does not cling. They move through a city, a marketplace, a storm, a celebration, but their identity is not owned by any of it. They witness, they experience, but they do not grasp. Imagine a traveler walking through a bustling ancient town, merchants shouting, children laughing, arguments rising like dust from the ground. The traveler hears it all but knows none of it defines their path. They may interact, respond, adapt, but they do not drown in the noise. They are in the world, but not absorbed by it. This is the first layer of saying 42. Live without being possessed by what you encounter. But the deeper layer reveals itself only when we examine how the ego operates. The ego's purpose is to convince you that you are the sum of your possessions, your beliefs, your achievements, your role, your past. It wants to root you into something solid, even if that solid thing is pain, trauma, pride, or fear. The ego defines itself through attachment, and so the simple act of becoming a passerby is a direct rebellion against the ego's architecture. When you pass through an experience, instead of clinging to it, the ego cannot latch on. When you observe yourself, rather than identify with every impulse, a gap opens, and in that gap, consciousness awakens. Mystics understood this. Wanderers understood this. Jesus, in the Gospel of Thomas, teaches it wordlessly, with radical simplicity. But there is another dimension, one rarely spoken about directly. In ancient esoteric circles, the world was often seen as a temporary school, a kind of soul labyrinth. The body was a garment, the personality a mask, and life itself a series of corridors, doors, and thresholds meant to shape and refine the inner being. If you mistake the corridor for the destination, you never reach the deeper chambers. You get stuck in the hallway. Become passers-by was, in this context, a reminder. Do not mistake the transient for the eternal. Do not confuse the lesson for the identity. Do not anchor your soul in something designed to flow. But this saying is not asking us to be detached in the cold, empty sense. It is not a rejection of life. Quite the opposite. It is an invitation to live more freely, more fully, more consciously. When you stop clinging, you start noticing. When you loosen your grip, life reveals itself without distortion. You begin to see relationships not as ownership, but as connection. You begin to see challenges not as punishments, but as teachings. You begin to see your identity not as a fixed sculpture, but as a river. Here, we uncover something powerful. To become a passerby is to become fluid, not fragile, fluid, not aimless, unbound. This is why the saying feels like a riddle. It's not just about passing through the world. It's about passing through yourself, through your stories, your illusions, your inner walls. It's about witnessing your mind the same way you witness a passing crowd, with curiosity, without entanglement. There is a final nuance in part one that mystics especially cherished. A passerby is anonymous, not hidden, but unattached to recognition. In a world where identity is currency, anonymity is power. To walk unseen, not because you are invisible, but because you are free from the need to be seen. This is spiritual sovereignty. And so, saying 42 begins to reveal itself as a kind of spiritual compass. It points us toward a way of being that dissolves heaviness, illusion, and egoic fixation. It is a call to reclaim the lightness we lost when we began taking the world too seriously, and ourselves even more so. If part 1 reveals the philosophical surface of saying 42, then part 2 pulls us into the undercurrent, the deeper esoteric logic behind Jesus' cryptic command to become passers-by. This is where the saying transforms from a gentle suggestion into a profound spiritual paradox. Let's begin with a rarely discussed truth. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus does not describe a path toward God out there. He describes a path toward the unborn, unconditioned presence within the kingdom is not external. It is already here, hidden in plain sight, concealed by layers of identity and illusion. And the mystics believed that the great obstacle to perceiving this inner kingdom is not ignorance, not sin, not even fear, but attachment to form. Here lies the deeper meaning of the command. The world as a dream of forms. In esoteric traditions, from early Christian mysticism to Hermeticism and even Indian Vedanta, the physical world is seen as real in its appearance, but not real in its permanence. Everything is shifting. Bodies age, emotions flicker, beliefs evolve, landscapes crumble. The Gnostics often referred to this world as a kind of divine dream, a projection of consciousness, meant to be experienced, but not mistaken for the ultimate truth. To them, a passerby was someone who recognized the world's shifting, dreamlike nature. Think of someone in a lucid dream. They walk through the environment, but they no longer fear it, cling to it, or get lost within it. They participate fully, but they also understand the deeper reality behind appearances. This is the essence of saying 42. Live in the dream, but awaken within it, passing through the illusion of self. Now, we confront a more disturbing implication. If the world is transient, then so are you, or at least the version of you that you cling to. Your personality, your story, your successes and failures are all forms, temporary, shifting, dissolving. A passerby does not cling even to their own identity. This is why the saying is so jarring. It requires a kind of inner death, not a physical death, but the death of the false self, the persona built from memory and desire. Mystics across traditions call this the second birth, the awakening, the return to the unconditioned self. To pass by your own ego is to stand at the edge of a cliff, watching everything you once believed yourself to be dissolve like mist. And yet, in that dissolution, something truer emerges, something ancient, something luminous, something free. The paradox of presence and detachment. One of the greatest misunderstandings of saying 42 is the belief that it promotes withdrawal from life. Many assume it encourages apathy or emotional coldness, but here lies the paradox. Only a passerby can engage with life fully. Those who cling are terrified to lose love, so they smother it, terrified to lose status, so they seek validation, terrified to lose identity, so they resist growth. But a passerby is fearless. They can love without owning, create without clinging, serve without needing recognition, live without being caged by expectations. Far from withdrawing, they become more present, because their presence is not distorted by fear or attachment. The mystics understood that when you stop clinging to life, you begin to experience life as it truly is, the hidden initiatory context. Here's a little-known insight. In ancient spiritual communities, the phrase passerby was sometimes used as a code word for initiates who were ready to move from the outer teachings to the inner mysteries. A passerby was someone who had loosened their identity enough to handle deeper truth that could destabilize those still rooted in ego. This gives saying 42 a subtle initiatory flavor, as if Jesus is not simply telling his followers what to do, but declaring who they must become in order to proceed a traveler, a witness, a lucid participant in the great dream, not fixed, not finished, not owned by the world, passing through, toward what? Toward the center of their being, where the eternal resides untouched. It's one thing to understand the mystical depth of saying 42, become passers-by. But real transformation begins when these ancient words become a lived experience, something you embody in your daily life. The beauty of this teaching is that it doesn't require a monastery, a guru, or a desert cave. It requires only awareness and the willingness to loosen your grip on the world, just a little at a time. Let's translate this into practice, into rituals and shifts that quietly dissolve the heaviness of the ego and awaken the presence beneath one. The practice of the witness. This is the foundation. Several times a day, during a conversation in traffic while eating, pause inwardly and observe. What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I clinging to in this moment? Don't analyze, just notice. This creates a subtle gap between you and your experience. That gap is the passerby awakening within you. When you stand in that gap, even for a breath, your ego loosens. You're no longer trapped inside your thoughts. You're watching them drift across consciousness like clouds. The mystics taught that this is the beginning of freedom. 2. Let it pass. Breathwork. This simple technique mirrors the symbolism of becoming a traveler through your own mind. Inhale slowly through your nose. As you exhale, imagine releasing whatever you're holding, an emotion, a judgment, a tension in the body. Whisper softly or internally, let it pass. Do this for 3 to 5 breaths. The phrase, let it pass, echoes, saying 42, but redirects it inward. Instead of moving through the world, you allow the world to move through you without sticking. This dissolves emotional reactivity and clears the space for clarity. 3. The ritual of impermanence. Take an everyday object, your coffee cup, your phone, a leaf, a ring, and hold it with gentle awareness. Study it as if you were seeing it for the first and last time. Then quietly affirm, "This too will pass, and I will pass by it." This is not meant to induce sadness. It's meant to awaken presence. When you recognize the fleeting nature of things, you savor them more fully. Appreciation replaces craving, presence replaces obsession, and slowly, your relationship with the world becomes lighter, more conscious, more alive. 4. Practice anonymous kindness. Choose one act of kindness each day that no one knows you did, not a gesture that earns praise, not something you tell friends about, something invisible. This trains the ego to loosen its need for recognition. It shifts your identity from the doer to the presence behind the action. This is one of the purest ways to cultivate the passerby mindset, acting in the world without being trapped by the identity of the actor. 5. The unclenching exercise. Throughout the day, gently observe your body. Where is it tense? Where is it gripping? Jaw, belly, shoulders. These micro-tensions are physical manifestations of inner clinging. Whenever you notice one, just soften it. Release it. As the body unclenches, the mind follows. 6. Embrace small transitions. Instead of rushing through the spaces between activities, treat transitions, walking between rooms, stepping off the bus, waiting in line, as spiritual corridors. In these moments, whisper inwardly, "I am only passing through." Suddenly, your day becomes a pilgrimage, every moment a threshold, every step a reminder of the journeying spirit within, the transformation. If practiced sincerely, these simple rituals generate a powerful shift. You stop over-identifying with emotions. You move through conflict without absorbing it. You love more freely because you're not trying to possess anything. Your sense of self becomes spacious, clear, and resilient. These techniques don't detach you from life. They immerse you in it with greater wisdom and less fear. They make you a lucid traveler in a world where most people are sleepwalking. In the end, saying 42, "Become passers-by," is not a command meant to distance you from life, but an invitation to awaken within it. It's a reminder whispered across centuries, urging you to loosen the grip of the world on your soul and loosen your grip on the illusions that keep you small. These two words point to a way of being that is lighter, freer, and more attuned to the truth behind appearances. The mystics knew that life is a river, not a monument. Everything flows. Everything transforms. And the moment we cling, whether to identity, belief, fear, or desire, we stop flowing with it. We become stuck in eddies of our own creation. The passerby, however, moves with the current while remaining rooted in something deeper than change. As you've journeyed through this exploration, you may feel a subtle shift, a sense that these ancient words are not just spiritual poetry, but a key that unlocks a forgotten part of your consciousness. Perhaps you've glimpsed the traveler within you, the witness who sees without attachment, who feels without losing themselves, who loves without trying to possess. This is the awakening at the heart of saying 42. Not withdrawal, not detachment in the cold sense, but freedom. Freedom from the illusions that keep you bound to what is fleeting. Freedom to engage with life from clarity rather than fear. Freedom to walk your path with openness, fluidity, and inner strength. And as you begin to practice the techniques we explored, witnessing, breathwork, anonymous kindness, the ritual of impermanence, you may find that something remarkable happens. The world doesn't fade. It becomes more vivid, more spacious, more real, because now you see it through the eyes of one who passes through consciously, not mechanically. So, as we end this journey, let these words echo in your mind like a mantra, like a compass, like a quiet revolution. Become passers-by. Become travelers of the inner world. Become witnesses of your own awakening. If this exploration stirred something within you, if it opened a door or illuminated a forgotten corner of your inner life, consider liking, commenting, or sharing your reflections. But more importantly, carry the teaching with you. Your next breath, your next step, your next moment, you are passing through it. Make the passage conscious.